За сайн байцгаана уу эрхэм үзэгчдээ манай Syndicate Talk Exclusive буюу Syndicate ярилцлагын маань тусгай дугаарын ээлжид одоо нэгэн шинэ дугаар та бүхэнд өнөөдөр хүрч байна. Тэгээд энэ дугаараараа би бас нэгэн сонирхолтой зочныг урьсан байгаа. Миний энэ зочин бол John Carlsen. Монголд сүүлийн 30 гаруй жил ажиллаж амьдарч маш олон бизнесийг амжилттай эхлүүлж Монголыг бараг биднээс илүү мэддэг болсон хүнтэй эрхэмийг урьсан маа. Тэгээд энэ эрхэм маань саяхан өөрийнхөө бас намыг гаргасан байгаа. Монголд өнгөрүүлсэн 30 жилийнхаа түүхийг үгс намыг гаргасан байгаа маа. Тэгээд thank you very much for accepting my invitation to be part of my TV talk show.
Nice to be here.
I heard that you wrote your book about Mongolia and your experiences in Mongolian various sector, in business sector, as well as your, your personal life here in Mongolia. So I would like to ask, why did you decide to write a book about Mongolia, and what motivated you?
Well, I think a lot of people have asked me to do it, and believe it or not, most of the questions have been more about technical subjects, like how to build this house, or how to do this structure, or the business questions. But then we included in the book everything, the hunting stories, fishing stories, the development of Wagner Company, Ayanchin Outfitters, Ayanchin Lodge, etc., as well as what I did later with Newcom and MSM company.
Those people who asked you to write book, and there's mostly Mongolians or foreign expats?
Almost all Mongolians.
All Mongolians,
yeah,
okay,
sure.
Great.
We assume that's the target audience.
Okay.
That's why we printed the book in English and Mongolian.
Okay. Actually, by the way, what brought you in Mongolia? When? And
oh God,
what made you stay more than 30 years now?
More than 30 years ago, Caterpillar had a factory rep office here, and they wanted to finally bring a dealer in here. So then they started shopping around for a dealer, and they went to us in Seattle, Washington, and said, we'd like you to come over and take a look at Mongolia. Our dealer principal at the time, John J. Harnish, said, no way, we're already working in Russia, we've got enough to do. So the Caterpillar guys came to me and said, came to him and said, can we take John on a hunting trip to Mongolia? And he said, no. And he said, what if he uses his own time? Yeah. And so I came over here to hunt elk, fell in love with the place, and then 2 years later, I left that company after 18 years with them and went to work for the Wagner people and came over here to help them get this cat dealership started here.
That was end of 1990?
1998. Yeah.
So then I read your book, and obviously you have the very wide and rich experiences in Mongolia, not only this mining sector, but also various sectors, tourism and trade, retail, etc. And I just would like to ask, what was your main strategy when you started a new business in Mongolia, and what were the main tangible results so far you have done in Mongolia for Mongolians? Well,
if you come in here, from our perspective, the advantages that we had is we had money and we had contracts. We had a Caterpillar contract, and we had a lot of ability to talk to foreign suppliers, okay? So it's important to come in here and lead, be first, have direct contacts and contracts with suppliers and so forth, and to create something that was new. Which is what we did. A good example, Ayanchin Outfitter store was really the first store in Mongolia where you could actually walk through a store. Yeah. Instead of talking across a counter, you could walk through a store and touch and feel the goods. So that was pretty dramatic. The tangible results, I would name our number one tangible result with the Wagner business is we set up very quickly, we realized that there were no competent diesel technicians, heavy equipment technicians here. And so we started up a training institute, which eventually employed 16, 18 people, half expats. And we put, through a 1-year diesel training program, we put 780 people through that program over a 10-year period. Wow. 780. Today, if you go to any car dealership, go down to OT, go down into the mines in the Gobi, go to the heavy equipment shops, virtually all of the supervision and top guys are Wagner technician alumni.
Wow, thank you for that. That's a huge investment.
It was a huge, the investment was, we were spending $2 million a year on that. And I notice now that, nobody does that anymore because they're leveraging those guys to try and kind of develop that. But they're all over, our alumni are all over the country, and that's really the proudest thing that we did.
I noticed the one chapter on your book that some of those guys went to almost invited to U.S., New Mexico, to reassemble it at the big machine, correct?
Nobody would believe it. I used to tell our dealer principal, because we were assembling all these trucks down to Zamanuit. We had a huge operation putting trucks together, which is a complicated business, millions of dollars worth of equipment and tooling, and very specialized. And I used to tell the dealer principal, and I said, one of these days, you guys are going to sell some big trucks, and you're going to ship Mongolians over to do that and put those trucks together. And he used to laugh at that, like, no. And finally, they got a big order in New Mexico, and they shipped, 16, 18 Mongols over there, including all their equipment, to go over and put those trucks together, which was pretty cool.
May I say that that was your first business in Mongolia was almost first foreign direct investment from U.S.? May I say that?
I would say so. The oil guys, that started up. What was the name of that?
Soho company.
Yeah, they were in here also very early. But we came in here with $4 million worth of registered capital. When I left the company in 2011, our capital investment in the country was $130 million US dollars. So I think we were probably the largest foreign invested company that was privately owned. That was not a government-owned entity.
So obviously, because of this business, you worked almost all the Mongolian big mining companies,
Right.
Both Mongolian and foreign invested.
Yep.
So also you touched also on an important issue on this book that's related to OT. You have the chapter that's on this book that's critical of OT and their procurement procedures. Is this subject still valid? And what could Ayutthaya OT to improve their performances and attitudes for the Mongolian people?
Well, the chapter covers a truck purchase they did 15 years ago, which they basically used a Rio Tinto's frame contract with Komatsu company to purchase the trucks, which I think was a real benefit for the Rio company, but I'm not so sure that the people of Mongolia benefited from that as well as Rio company did, because at the time Komatsu had virtually no infrastructure. They had no real ability to assemble and support those trucks here at the time, and we were quite a ways ahead of them on that. So in retrospect, I mean, we stayed pretty busy because the coal miners, down at Energy Resources, but that's a good chapter. In terms of today, it's interesting that there's all this conversation, about corruption in procurement and so forth. Some of these problems are really, really simple to solve. What Ayutthaya should do today is just contract out their procurement to a foreign procurement company. There's probably 10, 15 companies around the world that do global procurement for large mining companies, and Rio doesn't happen to participate in that, but most of the big mining companies are doing that now, and that would save the Mongolian people millions and millions of dollars. I think just eliminate the procurement department here, and just go hire somebody else to do it for them, and then the corruption problem becomes either less or goes away.
Sure.
So,
did you suggest this idea to OT and Rio Tinto guys yet?
I don't think they've even let me on site for about 10 years. We used to have a facility on site down there. We had the first facility. I built the first branch facility down in Hanbog 3 years before the stability agreement was signed. We were providing power for Hanbog Sum long before the mine even got started. My first visit to the Ayutthaya mine, there was 2 Gears, 2 Toyota Land Cruisers, 4 Australian geologists,
that's it,
and a couple of drivers down there in 2 Gears. So that's changed quite a bit.
It was very interesting to see and read quite a few Mongolian names on your book.
Okay.
Some politicians and also the bad and good business people, etc. The real story. Besides that, I really would like to highlight here one story you had interacted with the at that time former prime minister, the Ilbidorj.
Right.
He came at your launch, the Ayanchin launch, and it seemed that you guys had the whole night gambling.
Right.
And you won, but...
Well, now hang on. He taught me how to play 8-card stud, which I've never played before. So my first couple hours, I'm learning, and he's getting way ahead of me. Okay, he was beating me. I was down, $300, $400, $500. And then as the night progressed, 2, 3, 4 in the morning, he started getting reckless because he thought I couldn't get the better of him. And then very slowly I started kind of getting my money back. And we ended up calling it a night, went to bed at 3, 4 in the morning. And he still owes me $300. Albigdorch, you still owe me $300.
Are you still trying to collect your debt, yeah?
Of course.
Okay, I might help you. And the Mongolia is very young country in terms of the population, and when you see that the hierarchy of the population, so we have lots of opportunity.
Sure,
to
of course.
say. For this instance, I would like to hear your advice, especially for Mongolian, the young people, business people, entrepreneurs, in terms of their career path, and also what could they learn from your book?
Well, I think number one, the challenge in Mongolia today is providing meaningful careers and meaningful employment for these young people. And, when I talk to these young kids, I was talking to a young guy the other day, and I said, okay, you're out of high school now. What are you going to do? And he said, well, I'm going to study. And I said, no, you're not going to get away with that. What do you mean you're going to go study? Well, I'll study finance or business or something. And I told him, I said, are you aware of artificial intelligence? Do you realize that those are going to be the first jobs eliminated by artificial intelligence, all these business and finance guys, right? I told him, I said, if you go to America today, the highest paid guys in America are electricians, plumbers, these guys putting together data centers, this kind of thing. Go find our Wagner diesel technician program alumni here in Mongolia and go see what they're being paid. And they're being paid a lot more money than most of these kids that are going to UCLA or some school in England or something and coming back with some degree in finance or something. So these are already today in Mongolia, the best path to staying here would be to develop a technical capability that is a demand kind of job, a diesel technician, electricians, plumbers, welders, those kind of jobs.
It seems that the young people have two kind of the choices. First, they get employed and maybe a part of the big company like, CAT or Wagner Asia or something, or to start their own businesses. Yeah?
Right.
Which one would you prefer and which one would you suggest to them?
Well, I think a large percentage of Mongolians think if they start up a business, then they become like an overnight millionaire. And that's normally not the case. It's very difficult running your own business. It's difficult collecting money, doing all the accounting and doing all the things that you have to be able to do to be successful at a business. When I first got here, everybody assumed that I owned Wagner, but America has a whole infrastructure, a whole cadre of people like myself who are just hired guns, just guys who work for the ownership and are well compensated. The Mongolians used to tell me, "Oh, we feel so bad that you didn't own the company," and I had to laugh a little bit. I was being paid like 200 times as much as they were being paid, and they're worried about me. And I'm like, no, you need to worry about yourself. I think the most important thing is to go to work, period, and learn something concrete, something. And I wouldn't worry so much about whether you own the company or not. Most of the people here that own their own companies now are people that work for a company for 10 or 15 years, developed experience in that subject, and then went out on their own.
When you were working in Mongolia, so you had also lots of challenges. Also, every the behind of the success there was a big problems. So I noticed that on the few of these chapters there is the cases of the Mongolian courts. Yeah?
Right.
Almost each different levels. Yeah.
Sure.
Then apparently you have had several interactions with the Mongolian court system over here.
Too many.
Then what could be to improve the Mongolian court and judicial system, and what was the biggest lesson learned in Mongolia?
Well, I think I was in some of the earliest court cases that we had were with Mongol Gazer company, and we would go to court. And Mongol Gazer would send an attorney and he'd say, well, his aunt had died or his brother was sick or something. And then the judge would dismiss the case. We finally got Myeongenbayer, who was the general director of Mongol Gazer. We finally got him in the courtroom. And the judge was there, kind of being bored and, mostly listening to stories. Really, it didn't seem like they were that interested in the actual facts and contracts in the case. But they had a citizen's representative there.
Then one old guy. Yeah.
This old guy with a kind of a pork pie hat and a children's school notebook.
Yeah.
And he sat and listened to this whole proceeding for about an hour. And finally the judge asked him, is there anything you'd like to say? And he looked at Myeongenbayer and he said, did you read this contract? Yes. Did you understand the contract? Yes. Did you sign the contract? Yes. And then he said, oh, you are a very bad man. And so I think, this judge system, I don't know where this comes out of some German or European judicial system, but I would be more confident if Mongolia were to adopt a jury system like America has, where you would have a jury of your peers. You would have Mongolian citizens actually judge you rather than a judge. I think that system would be fairer, would be less prone to any kind of corruption, and I think over time would serve the Mongolian people better.
Thank you for that. And are you still active in Mongolia? If so, what kind of the business and industries are you working in?
Well, I just very little. Occasionally to answer some questions and do a little, Q&A work with a company that's bringing in some aerial work platforms, a new Gobi Star company. I talked to a couple different guys in town. It's kind of a ex officio, CEO coach type of a job.
Okay.
So I do a little of that, but not much. Mostly I'm here in the summer to travel, and I've been most everywhere in Mongolia. This year we're going to get over to Bayat-Olgi. Finally, I've never been there.
Oh, really? Never been there? How come?
There was never any customers or mining operation over there, so I never got over there. So I've got a caravan and a pickup truck, and now we're going to go over there.
Just after Nadam?
Just tomorrow, in fact. We'll head out tomorrow,
Okay. And on your book also, you mentioned one very important, the point, especially for the Mongolians. You argued that most of the Mongolian companies, they don't have the direct relationship with the dealers, official distributors, and the big brands and big names. Yeah.
Right.
Why is so that, and how can we have the direct contact with them?
Well,
so there is always the middleman in between, and end users like me are paying all those costs. Yeah? How can we,
the number of levels you got, somebody's paying those bills. A good example is the Japanese trading companies are here. They add 10-20% to the price of everything, all Japanese goods that are sold here. What we always tried to do with Ayanchin outfitters and with New Gobi Star and with Wagner was have direct contracts with suppliers. The challenge for that is you got to go through a vetting process. Okay. So I'll give you an example. The owners of New Gobi Star, we wanted to get them a contract with JLG company, with Komatsu's pyramid parts business, and we ended up having to go through an 18-month vetting process with 2 different legal firms in Ohio. They had to be vetted for anti-corruption, any kind of relations with people in the government, et cetera. So it's quite a process, but then you've got a direct contact. So, for example, they have a contract with JLG company, which is the largest manufacturer of aerial work platforms in the world. And they have a direct contract with them in Pennsylvania. So the business is direct. You know, you're dealing with them. There's no middlemen. There's no, you know, broker in Moscow or a wholesaler in Seoul or so forth. The reason that those kind of companies, especially the publicly traded ones, they don't want to have a direct relationship with a Mongolian company because they're publicly traded, and they are fearful that if, you know, they open up the Wall Street Journal this morning and say somebody got caught bribing a prime minister or something, that drives their stock value down, and they're like, wait a minute, we don't want to lose, you know, $500 million in stock price just so we can do business directly with a Mongolian company. So it's a long process, but it's an important one to get started. With Ayanchin Outfitters, we have the same relationship directly with Garmin, with Columbia, with a number of those suppliers. Those are always direct relationships. But those are hard, and I know that's uncommon here.
Then can I say that the Mongolia is still not mature yet to directly communicate and work, make a contract with the big names?
The issue is corruption. The issue is just corruption because the publicly traded companies like Caterpillar, our Wagner contract was not with Caterpillar. It was with Wagner International in the United States, and then they had the direct contract with Caterpillar. Our contract with Land Rover was with a wholesaler in London, and then they had the direct contract with Land Rover. So we had some similar contracts like that also, because the companies don't want to be able to have what's the word? Plausible deniability. You know, if there's some kind of issue that comes up, some kind of local issue comes up.
I see. So I was surprised that you never been in Mongolia, and happy to learn that you're living there. I also live during the Nadam for Mongolia.
Oh, really?
So so we may meet somewhere.
Well, this quarantine issue, apparently it's just certain Sooms that are being quarantined right now, not the whole IMAG. So we're hoping.
So except Mongolia, have you traveled all Mongolian provinces and so on?
I've been everywhere in Mongolia. I've probably been more places than 99%. Well, because we got to go everywhere. You know, and we used to be able to. We had money. You know, we were able to charter helicopters and go all over the place. I have not been way out east either. What's the name? What's the name of that area? I can't.
The Dornot?
Well, no, way farthest eastern, that small little protected area over there. I've never been over there either. So, and I'd like to get over there, but I'm not sure I ever will. So,
your hobby is hunting and fishing, right? So then I thought, you know, that's why I thought you traveled all around the
then we had mining, we had construction, mining, power generation, customers all over the country.
How about around the world? Are you the good traveler?
I think somebody asked me what my country count was the other day, and I think I'm up to 46 now. So I've visited 46 different countries, mostly, you know, Europe, Asia, and North America. I've spent little time in South America, and just been to Namibia in Africa. But I try and travel 2 or 3 months a year, and then spend 4 or 5 months a year in Thailand, and then 3 or 4 months here in Mongolia.
Not really in US?
No.
Well, why not?
The United States is getting too crazy for me at this point. It's almost like a nut house, you know. It's very polarized. And it's not a real comfortable place to really be anymore. I have mostly not spent that much time there in the last 30 years, in fact.
Now I would like to hear your opinion about the Mongolian people. So you have the very rich experience in communicating, contracting, and working with the various Mongolians.
Sure.
And what the best characteristic of Mongolian people and the worst is? And if you don't mind, if it doesn't make you uncomfortable, please name 5 Mongolian people you know who admire you the most.
Well, the best characteristic about Mongolians is their ability to get things done, to get the job done. We would have fields. I used to have like 100 field service vehicles, and we had 250 technicians, and we'd send them out all over the country, and they would leave with a pickup truck, 2 guys in a pickup with a transmission and a bunch of tools in the back, and they might be gone for like 17 days. They'd leave. And when they came back and you heard the door slam, you knew the problem was solved. And so those guys had an incredible ability to go out and go through all the pain and suffering and get the job done, and then come back and ready to go again. So I think that was the most positive thing I can say about the people. I think the challenge with the negative thing is just trying to get the Mongolian people to have more confidence in their decision making, taking risks, and saying, a bad decision put together executed with a team is better than a no decision, or wondering what to do, or watching the other guy. It's getting that confidence to go out and make something happen. Who are the five most famous Mongolians? Well, in my opinion, the Mongolian person that has done more for this country, the economy of this country, than anyone, and I mean anyone, was our director of our training program, whose name was Hun Shagai Baldorj, a woman. She's still with Barlow World now, who's taken over from Wagner. She ran that whole training program for 10 years, and without her, we would have never got that done. And in my opinion, all those technicians out around Mongolia, she was the one who nursemaided that whole project. So I put her up as number one. Oh wow, there's lots of Mongolians I've worked with over the time. I have a group of like 13 guys I get together with once a year, and we have I buy the beer, and then they all have a little social hour. Amar, who's done the translation, worked for me on this book. He's done just a great job with that. I've got a lot of good friends over there doing that. Over the years, I got to meet most of the early prime ministers of the country back in the 2000s. And the OJs and Nimtashers and those kind of guys. So I think the development of this country has just been incredible. If you would have told me that this place would look like today, if you would have told me it was going to look like what it looked like today 25 years ago,
you wouldn't believe.
I would have bet any amount of money against that. So this has been a great development. I'm a conservationist. I would like to see the resurgence of wildlife and so forth in the country. And so in a lot of ways, concentrating the population more and more in Mongolia and vacating a lot of the wilder spaces in the country over time should pay benefits. I hope the Mongolian people that this is what they want. I walk around UB and I kind of wonder, wow, is this really what Mongolians wanted? Was this kind of urban jungle? But from a conservation standpoint, I think it's a good trend.
Benefit for the wild animals and
sure, of course.
I have to ask about the concentration of the Mongolian people in UB and including traffic jam. So you feel it every day, yeah? So what would be a solution? So we are trying to combat, we try to combat last, again, almost 20, 30 years, the air pollution in UB, traffic jam, etc. But, there is a slight, the result. And what would be the best solution in your opinion?
I don't know. The problem in Mongolia now is there has to be a social contract that comes along with democracy.
Yep.
Okay. So now all of a sudden everybody has some legal right to have a car, and there's a lot of cheap cars on the road, a lot of tax base doesn't support all this. Probably the first thing the government could do, which would be unpopular and would be unworkable, was just ban the sale of right-hand steer vehicles in the country. That would be an obvious thing to do. If you go to places like Singapore and so forth, they manage their vehicles on the road. In terms of trying to improve the infrastructure here, go to Los Angeles. They build a 4-lane interstate, it's full of cars. They take it to 6 lanes, it's full of cars. They take it to 8 lanes, it's full of cars. They take it to 12 lanes, it's full of cars. So just constantly improving the infrastructure here will never solve this problem, in my opinion. They've got to limit the number of cars in this country now.
And like I said, Singapore. Yeah?
Sure, same as Singapore.
Use the tax system,
Would be very, very unpopular here.
Yeah, I know.
and whoever enacted such a law would probably get voted out in the next election. So it's a tough issue. And But it seems to me like a lot of people on this traffic, it doesn't seem to bother them that much. It drives me crazy, you know. And I've spent a lot of time driving in like Bangkok, and I can tell you the traffic in Bangkok and Kuala Lumpur is a lot better than here. And the Mongolians seem to, they can't be fine with it, but it amazes me how tolerant they are of this terrible traffic here.
The next one is my favorite question. So every time I ask my guests this question, that question is, in your opinion, what's the current Mongolian identity and what it should be, again, in your opinion? There is no right and wrong answer, yeah?
Sure. Well, you know, if you went back 25 years, what's happening right now in the tourism industry is people are searching, tourists from all over the world, it's a big industry, are searching for something that's authentic, okay? And so when they land at UB Airport, they want to be met by guys with camels and, you know, nomad dressed people and horses and stuff. And instead there's a line of, you know, Range Rovers and Toyota Land Cruisers, and they're kind of like, oh boy, we showed up too late. And so I think Mongolia should have tried for something more authentic, rather than just trying to ape. You know, I walk around downtown here and these kids are all dressed like they're living in Compton, Los Angeles, you know. And I think Mongolia should have tried for something a little more authentic and to deliver something more unique to the country, rather than this kind of urban environment that UB's turning into. So.
And my next question is, if you are the king of the day, you know, you have the, unlimited power of financial resources or whatever, and could get one thing done here in Mongolia for Mongolians, what would it be?
Well, I think it goes back to an earlier question, which is, you know, if I walk around, spend a lot of time in Seoul, Korea, and, you know, I talk to a lot of Mongolians, a lot of Mongolian parents, and it always surprises me that Mongolian parents tell me that their greatest dream for their children is to escape, to go to Canada or the United States or somewhere in Europe and so forth. And this country has got to create an environment where the children want to stay here and have a meaningful career, meaningful existence here in Mongolia. And I think over time, their parents and grandparents have to generate an environment here where these children want to stay, rather than kind of working as an incubator for a workforce, you know, to go other places in the world. Because it's economically inefficient to raise children and then hand them over to the Koreans as a workforce. It's crazy.
That's really, you know, the hard and challenging fact indeed.
Yeah, sure, of course.
Yeah. And on your book, there is a guy named Andy. He mentioned several times, laying over almost 4 chapters. And who is this guy? Who is this guy?
Well, he's my best friend. He lives in Montana. I've known him forever. And I think we included those chapters just to give foreign readers and some of the Mongolian readers kind of some insight into having a foreigner come here for a week or two and kind of how he experienced Mongolia and kind of the fun and tragic events that came along with that. You know, if you go into YouTube or TikTok or all these places, there's so many articles and little shows about somebody having some epic journey into Mongolia, you know, for a week and so forth. And it's interesting. It's interesting to see this country from the perspective of being here for decades rather than for a week or two. And but we put Andy in there so you could see the short version. Yeah. You know.
Yeah. So where people can buy your book? It's printed in English and Mongolian, yeah?
We've printed it in English and Mongolian. We also are with Kindle in Amazon. We have a printed version in Amazon, you know, if you're in the United States, for readers in the United States and so forth. Azur bookstore has it on Sun Road and also in their other store.
The big one is Internom.
Yeah, the big store. And then Internome has got in Shangri-La Mall and also in their store downtown over by Petrovis headquarters.
By the way, why did you name your book, High Tolerance for Ambiguity?
Well,
that's what wraps up our conversation.
There's a chapter in the book where I meet a guy in Moscow one night, and 6 months later he came to visit us in Mongolia and took a tour of Mongolia for 2 weeks, and we were sitting down at Ayanchin Lodge after he got back, and he said, "John, you're going to do great in this country." And I said, "Well, really? Why is that?" And he said, "Well, because you have a very high tolerance for ambiguity." And I'll always remember that line, so that's why we use that as the title of the book. Ambiguity means, even today, every day in Mongolia, there's something that occurs that's ambiguous for me. It's confusing. That could have several different possible.
Quite often.
Well, just why did this occur? Why did he say this? Why? What's going on here? And so the challenge for me coming here, working in a foreign language, quite often we had Russian customers, Korean customers. We're working in a number of different languages, currencies. There was just so many things that are coming at you, and you have to. You have to move along with it, make things work. And so it's been a real challenge for me, even to this very day, the confusing aspects of what's going on here. In a lot of ways, I come from a very organized, regimented, kind of militaristic, corporate background in the United States. And then to come here where things are more kind of nomadically organized, last minute, we can get it done. It takes some mental adjustment to do that.
I remember that a few years ago, the foreign investor told me that the most stable thing in Mongolia is its instability. Do you agree with that, or it's getting better now?
The positive aspect. I remember once we had a Caterpillar, a vice president of Caterpillar come and visit, and I was working with Atkan Bilig, when he was alive. We used to run Erdenet, Big O. I used to call him Big O. And so I got him involved kind of as a matchmaker, okay? So I've got this vice president of Caterpillar here, and we got a car, and I'm telling Atkan Bilig, and he's saying, "Well, what do you want to do today? You got this guy for one day." And I said, "Well, we could go over and see the prime minister." He got on his phone, called over there and said, "Okay, get over there. He'll got to be there in 10 minutes. Well, we'd like to meet the governor of this and the head of Mongol Rus and the head of Erdenet and so forth." And he just lined it all up right on the spot. And by the end of the day, the Caterpillar guy was, wow, he just couldn't couldn't mentally grasp this. He wanted like an itinerary, with biographies and all that. And all we did was just kind of bang around town. And at the end of the day, I told him, "Look, we've just visited the prime minister, the head of Erdenet, the head of Mongol Rosvetfund, the head of Baganer Coal, the head of the Coal Interagency Authority. It's pretty good." But he was just, it was really rattled by the nomadic aspect of how that was done.
Okay, thank you very much. So I asked all the questions which I wanted.
Right.
But if you have, any more comments or advice or suggestions to people who are now watching us?
I think you've covered up pretty much everything. So.
Okay, thank you very much again. All
You
the
betcha.
best.
Thank you very much. I appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you. За эрхэм үзэгчдээ манай нэвтрүүлгийн түрээд өндөрлөж байна. Тэгээд өнөөдрийн ярилцлага та бүхэнд өгөөчтэй, сонирхолтой байсан байх гэдэгт итгэж байна. Дараагийн нэвтрүүлэг хүртэл түр баяртай үзэгчдээ. Баярлалаа.